Hey guys, how's this going? I'm Nick and welcome to Sci-Finatics live stream. So we're going to be talking about episode 6 of Star Trek Picard today, and a few other bits and pieces, how we're enjoying the series so far, some little tidbits that we might have picked up or noticed on last week's episode 5. So first, what we're going to do is we are going to have a bit of a look at the episode stills that came out from CBS the other day. So CBS, hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Basically what we're going to do, CBS came out with these stills from episode 6. So let's have a quick look at these promotional images that came out from the upcoming episode, which is entitled The Impossible Box, and see if we can pick up a few bits and pieces. Thanks, Joel. Joel says best live stream intro music ever. Good, mate. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So let's take a look at these stills and see what we can learn about our next episode of Star Trek Picard. So the first still which we've got here is a shot of Soji as a young girl. Obviously, if I had to guess, I would say that this would probably be, if I'm not mistaken, the opening sequence to the episode, because every episode we've had so far has all had a flashback scene as its opening scene. So if I had to guess, I would say this scene with young Soji waking up from a bed and so forth and coming to have a look at what her faux dad or whatever is doing would be part of it. So we've got these shots of Soji as a young girl, and she's obviously spying on her fake father, so to speak, and he's doing something in like a arboretum type area where he's growing some plants, maybe some orchids. I know that the Daj was named after a flower, I believe. Welcome, Dawson. Cheers from Iowa, mate. Thank you so much. So Soji. This is obviously a young Soji in this scene. The Impossible Box brought to mind. Yes, very much so. Yes, it'll be very interesting to see whether this little... we'll get to this in a minute. I've got a still coming up with this Impossible Box puzzle thing, which might have a link to this Pandora's box you're talking about, Marsom. So what do we got next? We've got, so obviously Raffi is clearly not feeling too well after being shunned by her son in the previous week's episode. So she's obviously looking at this still that came out the other day. She's in bed. She's got the bottle of grog on her bedside table, probably bourbon or scotch or something by the looks of it. And she's clearly not feeling well, and Rios has come in to hold her hand, make her feel a bit better, because the son's not wanting anything to do with her, clearly. But at least we've got her back on the ship again as part of our regular crew, which come on, there's no surprise there. We kind of knew she wasn't going to leave after 5 episodes. We kind of knew she was going to hang around. There was not really any big surprise there. And next we've got, she's feeling a little bit better now, and she's sitting up in bed having a bit of a chat to Rios, and looks like she's drinking a nice cup of tea or coffee or something to try to feel a little bit better. Hey DJ, how you going? For everyone, DJ is one of my my longest followers and subscribers to the channel. He's there every week, watching my videos and commenting on them all. So great to have you as part of the live stream, DJ. Good to have you here. So Raffi is obviously having a bit of a cuppa here. licking her proverbial wounds from being rejected by her son in the previous week's episode. And we're back on the bridge now, obviously. Whether this is something... I'm guessing there's going to be a bit of planning involved in this coming episode because on being on board the Borg cube, they're in Romulan space. It's not gonna be the most welcoming of environments, I'm guessing. So there's probably going to need to be a bit of planning involved to set up this mission. And obviously we've got Rios here looking rather stern, having a bit of a chat to Picard, with Elnor looking in the background and seeing if he can work out what they're going on. Elnor had a reasonably kind of comical input into last week's episode. He was sort of like the comic relief almost, which was good, but also we don't want to undermine his... badassery, if there's such a word as that, because clearly he was, made out to be quite a prolific fighter in the previous episode, whereas last episode down on Free Cloud and so forth, he was kind of just maybe a little bit childlike and a little bit slow. So hopefully Elnor will have some more combat action to become involved with in this week's episode. Next, we've got a shot of Elnor and Jurati. Now, it will be interesting to see what the fallout is from last week's episode. So, obviously, Jurati, she snuffed out... Thanks, Joel. It's badassery is a word, and if it's not, I just made it up. So, yes, I would be very interested to see what the fallout is from last week's episode, because obviously Jurati switched off Maddox's life support, and the EMH was kind of privy to this action, so it'll be interesting to see whether she tries to erase the logs or delete the EMH, or whether she is trying to implement something to cover her tracks. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether... is the EMH going to dob her in? Is Rios going to kick her off the ship? I don't know what's going to happen here. But yeah, obviously there's going to be some repercussions from Maddox's death. And whether that plays out in this episode or in the next episode after, I'm not sure. Yes, exactly, DJ. So this chase through the Borg cube should be exciting. We've seen lots of shots of this in previous trailers with, I think it's with Picard and Hugh and Soji running down the hallways of the cube. That will be interesting to... Interesting to see what plays out there. We've got Picard looking rather stern in his little, looks like a sort of like a polar fleece vest he's got on here. Obviously, he's looking a little bit tense, a little bit stressed. Obviously, rocking up to this Borg cube is going to bring back some old memories for him. And we'll see how that plays out in terms of whether he has any little... inbuilt tips and tricks that he can employ once on this cube to get him past certain access points or something. Maybe because we have noticed there was a scene at the beginning of was it First Contact where he punched in like these coordinates and said everybody attack this spot on the Borg cube. It seemed to be an area of low importance. But it turned out to be something that caused the whole cube to self-destruct and eject the Borg sphere out of it. So it'll be interesting to see whether Picard has got any little Borg trickery still in his system that he can employ in this episode. Another shot of Rios we've got here, just looking very rugged and I've often called Rios in my videos the Star Trek's Han Solo, which is kind of like, let's face it, Rios is kind of like the Star Trek Han Solo. The ship's kind of like the Millennium Falcon equivalent sort of thing. It's very much that way inclined at the moment. Yeah, the impossible box may be like a Chinese finger trap. Once you're in, you can't get out. It was very interesting because there's a shot coming up which we'll talk about that, Andrew. Before we get to that, though, this shot here. Now, I'm guessing that this shot of Rios is another one of his EMH programs, or I'm guessing. I mean, he looks like a lighthouse keeper with this beanie and the sort of woolen jumper with the high neck on the sweater. Is this going to be the EEH, perhaps the emergency engineering hologram? Is he going to be like the ship's engineer or something? We haven't seen an EMH wearing the beanie before, so I'm guessing this is possibly just another one in the many range of EMH systems, perhaps, that Rios has on board the ship. And we've got another bridge shot with Raffi obviously doing some button pushing, as she tends to do. And we've got, so obviously in this episode we've got Soji coming to terms with her past. There's some shots in this trailer that were on during the week where she was going through all these photos of her and her sister Daj and all that sort of stuff, where she's looking at photos. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how she unravels in this episode coming up, because she's now got enough information that she's kind of starting to put two and two together, where she's probably going to realize that her life and her backstory is a bit of a concoction. So it'll be just interesting how this plays out. Hey Skip, welcome to the channel. Good to have you here, mate. Cheers. Quick question. Don't you think 7 of 9 would have been helpful now? Why let her go in episode 5? Yeah, look, I kind of agree. I think I would be very surprised if she doesn't come back again in this season, because she gave Picard the little... I'm not sure what it was. Was it like a little calling card, a little communicator, or some kind of little business card equivalent for the Fenris Rangers? Some way of being contacted. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether Picard uses that in coming episodes to bring Seven back in again. I would be surprised if she didn't come back in again to the show for another episode in the season, because, well, you wouldn't just drop a little nugget like that into the last episode, say, here's my card, give me a call if you need some help. Well, of course he's going to need some help. So yeah, Seven is going to be back. And yeah, obviously she would have come in handy infiltrating a Borg cube. Why let her go so soon? But I guess maybe when Seven left the crew of the last arena, did they know at that point they were going off to a Borg cube in Romulan controlled space? I think she probably left the ship by then, I think. So it's almost, you need this shot of Picard at the beginning of X episode 6 going, oh, God damn it, we've got to go to a Borg cube and we let Seven go. I better give her a call and say, come back, don't go too far. So let's have a look at the next one. Now, this is an interesting environment on board the Borg cube, this room that Narek and Soji are in. It's got like a timber floor. It looks like almost like a dance hall or something, with all these lanterns on the ground. I'd almost wonder whether this is actually part of a dream sequence. We've seen this little box puzzle that kind of looks like a Rubik's cube, and this area has like a timber floor. And the box looks like it's made out of timber. So I almost wonder whether this environment is like a kind of a dream sequence interpretation of the inside of this timber impossible box puzzle thing that we're going to see in this episode. Andrew said, emergency detective hologram trying to solve the mystery of the Maddox death. Yes, possibly. I mean, let's face it, we've got a lot of holograms, on board this ship. So why not a detective hologram, I suppose. So I'm thinking maybe this environment that we're seeing in this photograph is a some sort of dream sequence interpretation, perhaps, of the inside of the box puzzle. Because let's face it, nice varnished timber floors aren't really a common sight aboard a Borg cube, are they? So all this wooden timber, it seems a bit out of place on board the Borg cube. So I'm thinking maybe it's part of the dream sequence to do with this puzzle box, perhaps. And we've got a shot of Narek looking suitably brooding, as he tends to be in this show. And he's obviously looking at Soji, trying to elicit some of this information out of her that he's been trying to get out of her since episode 1 or 2, but obviously fairly slow going on his behalf, which his sister Narissa has been a bit frustrated about. Andrew said, as far as we know, 7 will be back for episode 7 to 10. Okay, that's good to know if that's the case. Maybe Picard, I would say, Andrew, almost definitely, that they wouldn't just drop a calling card like this without using it. That's definitely going to come back into play. And then we've got obviously Narek and Soji again in the shot. The architecture, I wonder whether it would seem almost like looking at the architecture in some of these rooms, the living quarters and this space perhaps on the Borg cube. It looks like the Romulans have certainly tarted up some of the rooms on board the cube to have a bit more of a perhaps Romulan architectural flair to them, because obviously this isn't a doorway you would likely see on board a Borg cube. I think it seems very much like a more of a Romulan design aesthetic. So whether this is a space on board the Borg cube that the Romulans have kind of renovated, or whether this is part of a dream sequence, I'm not sure. And we've got more whispering in the ear and more probably lovey-dovey talk from Narek into Soji's ear in this scene. It will be interesting to see. Obviously, Narek finds some sort of loophole, perhaps, to get this information out of Soji in this episode. But there's clearly going to be lots of heavy breathing and whispery talking and all that sort of stuff, which Narek tends to do with not only Soji but also his sister, which is kind of also a bit kind of weird and creepy. But it is what it is. And we've got obviously this falling asleep shot, or with the eyes closing comment, which was dropped in the trailer, like she has to close her eyes in order to get it into this kind of dreamlike state where she is able to kind of maybe give him the information that he needs to find this the information on the synths that they're trying to uncover. So it'd be very interesting. Yes, that's right, Cortez. Very much creepy. Particularly with the sister. That's just kind of a bit not quite right. But they're obviously a very close family. So, yeah. And look, this is one part of the episode coming up that I think, and well timed, DJ. Hugh is going to play a big part in this episode. Obviously, here in this still frame from CBS released to promote the episode this week, we've got a shot of Picard and Hugh having a bit of a chat in a hallway here. I'll be very interested. Look, I think part of the charm of this show that I've found really endearing is these little moments of reuniting with characters. In the first episode, we had the dream sequence shots with Data. In the last episode, we had 7 of 9 back again. So it will be it'll really be good. I'm looking forward to seeing Hugh and Picard catch up on old times, and just be very interested to see how that's going to play out, and what the reception is going to be between these two, whether there'll be, any resentment from Hugh, or whether he's going to go, "Hey, Jean-Luc, buddy, haven't seen you for years and years. What's going on?" Or whether he's going to whether he's going to have some sort of animosity towards Picard. It'll be very interesting to see. This is probably the element of this next episode that I'm probably looking forward to seeing most. I think it will be a very good moment to see. And here's this impossible box. I'm assuming this is the box that the episode is referring to in this. So Firebird says, "Who knows? Maybe the Borg cube will be reactivated accidentally or intentionally." To say, yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I mean, there's. Obviously, the title of this episode being the Impossible Box. Whether that is in reference to this particular puzzle that we see in this shot here, which is obviously some sort of little Romulan Rubik's Cube kind of thing, or whether the Impossible Box title is in reference to the Borg cube. Obviously, there's a few analogies here with the box being the puzzle, the box being the Borg cube, and obviously this shot here with the little figurine rising up out of the box is, as I mentioned in my trailer review earlier in the week, meant to symbolize the awakening of Soji, I'm guessing. So yes, the little figurine rising up out of the box here is a kind of a link or connection to Soji awakening within the Borg cube. So obviously little metaphors here in this episode coming up. So now, and we get a very quick shot of this Borg. Now, whether something happens on board the Borg cube when maybe Soji activates to activate a whole bunch of Borg drones, I'm not sure, because it would seem like all of the drones on board the cube seem to be in a dormant state. Excuse me, I'll just have a sip of water. And if they're all in a kind of a dormant state, perhaps they all start waking up and chasing them through hallways or something like that, perhaps. But yeah, this Borg who we've seen before in a couple of other trailers, there is obviously a resemblance here. It's not Patrick Stewart, but it is somebody who kind of looks very much Locutus-ish. Whether this is something that occurs in real life, or whether this is some sort of flashbacky or dream sequency kind of moment that Picard's having once he's on board the cube, I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see. Any speculation on this guy, I'm not sure. So there's plenty of the Borg very much looks like Locutus. Even the outfit, the mesh and the chest paneling, it does look very, very similar. Joel, you're right, very much similar to what Picard wore when he was Locutus. I think the eye implant is a little bit different from Locutus, but yeah. It's definitely the costuming on this Borg guy here is very much reminiscent of Picard when he was Locutus. Now, the other thing that I thought was very interesting is we might, if we're very lucky, there might be a little chance we get to see Riker and Troy at the end of this episode. I'm not sure when Jonathan Frakes or Marina Sirtis have commented when their episode appearance is that we've sort of seen in trailers past, because we obviously know that they pop up in the show very soon, because we've seen shots of them in previous trailers. But I was looking at this this page on IMDb. And on IMDb, this little blurb for The Impossible Box, which is the next episode coming up tomorrow for Star Trek Picard. And I was looking down the cast list of this episode. And if we have a look at the cast list for this episode, we see this name here in the cast list. Lulu Wilson, who is playing the role of Kestra. Now, those of you who might remember way back with the Next Generation episode, I think it was a season 7 episode of the show. There we go. Okay, Andrew, this is what I'm getting to. Yes, right. So Riker and Troy will be in episode 7. Their daughter Kestra will be in episode 6, probably at the end, calling out for her father Riker, which is exactly what I was just getting to. So, Andrew, you're one step ahead of me. So Kestra being Troy. Kestra was the name of Deanna Troy's sister. So those of you who remember the episode in Next Generation, I think it was season 7. Deanna Troy was having all these flashbacks of an older sister that passed away, and her name was Kestra Troy. And it seems pretty clear that Deanna Troy and Will Riker have named their daughter Kestra. So it seems pretty likely that right at the end of this episode, we're going to see Kestra Troy Riker, Kestra Riker, Kestra Troy Riker, pop up at the end of episode 6, and then obviously we're going to get Troy and Riker in a much bigger way in episode 7. But we'll probably see that clip from the trailer where you hear her going, "Dad, Jean-Luc Picard is here." And that'll probably be how the episode ends if I had to guess, or something to that effect. So yeah. So Lulu Wilson. It seems odd to me looking at the casting for Lulu Wilson as Kestra Riker Troy in this episode. She's blonde. She's blonde. Now, Riker has dark brown hair. Troy has dark brown, if not black hair. Seems odd you'd cast a blonde girl as Riker and Troy's daughter, unless you were going to dye her hair. But there's some shots of her, I think. Was it shots of her in the trailer, a couple of trailers a while back, probably a month or two back, where she had like war paint on her face. She had like a quiver of arrows over her shoulder and looked like she was kind of leading Picard and Soji down a kind of a wood, heavily kind of tree-lined path, which looks very similar to the wooded environment that the Riker's cabin is in the trailers and so forth. So yeah, it will be very interesting to see her and obviously no doubt the Riker and Troy. So that's the end of my my stills. There. So there's obviously a lot of really interesting stuff coming up in this week's episode. I'm really looking forward to it. In other Star Trek, just have a quick look at the comments here, see if there's anything I have to respond to. Look, I mean, it would seem like there are a lot of stuff that's going to be going on in this Borg cube, but it almost seems like once our heroes have perhaps escaped from the Borg cube, are we going to have any need to go back there again? Or is that kind of the end of the Borg cube storyline? Just that once we've rescued Soji, we're not going to see the Borg cube again. But we shall see how that plays out, I suppose. It will be very interesting to see. And also whether there's a mass activation of Borg drones on board that on board that cube or what. So just getting along to some other Star Trek news, which I found quite interesting, which I heard this week. One piece of information I found quite interesting is has any of you guys seen this really amazing Deep Space Nine documentary called What We Leave Behind? If you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend taking a look at it. It's a really good documentary on the making of DS9. It goes back and interviews all the cast members and takes a bit of a retrospective look at the show. Excellent documentary, and they even have the writers of DS9 come up with a story for a first new episode, if there was going to be a new episode of DS9, what it would be. So if you haven't checked out this DS9 documentary, it's definitely worth having a look at. But I heard some news during the week that there is going to be a new documentary, a brand new documentary by the same producer that did What We Leave Behind. And this new documentary is going to be very similar to What We Leave Behind, but it is going to be on Voyager. That's right. So if you liked the documentary on What We Leave Behind on DS9, there's going to be a very similar one coming up soon. I think it's just been started, I believe, if what I read is correct, by the producers of the previous DS9 documentary. So that will be a great one to look out for coming up. With all, no doubt, with all interviews with all of the Voyager crew and cast and all that sort of stuff. Be very interesting to see. I love these little retrospective documentaries. They're great. I also read a nice little, speaking of Voyager, I also read a nice little interview during the week with Jonathan Frakes talking about his directing of the last episode, episode 5, and saying one of his favorite directorial moments of directing Picard, and for that matter, any show, I think he said, was that scene between Seven of Nine and Jean-Luc Picard at the end of episode 5. That fantastic scene with Seven standing on the transporter pad and asking Picard whether he felt he'd regained his humanity, and them sort of comparing notes on how they feel as individuals now, having gone through the Borg experience, and how they have never quite 100% regained their humanity, but they're doing their best. That was an amazing scene between those two. And Jonathan Frakes, said in an interview that was his most favourite scene as well. And I love the moment in that scene too, where as Seven was leaving, the Voyager theme came up. If you guys missed that, go rewatch the scene again. Just as Seven's about to beam out and they've had a little exchange, you hear the Voyager theme come in the background, and I got to say it gave me shivers up my spine and goosebumps all over. It was a great moment in the show. A really memorable one. DJ and Andrew, Voyager was on one of my favorites too. I think it would be awesome to. I think it would not only be awesome to see this documentary of Voyager, the cast and crew by the makers of the What We Leave Behind DS9 documentary, but also, I mean, great to see Seven of Nine in last week's episode, and Jerry Ryan, fantastic. She still got it. Great to see her in the show. And I think I did a little bit of a survey and a video on cast members of Star Trek that we might want to see turn up in Star Trek Picard. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's on one of my Star Trek Picard videos. It was on, like the top 10 guest stars, Star Trek guest stars we want to see in Picard. And I think number one was Janeway. Janeway had a very strong connection and dealings with the Borg while she was in the Delta Quadrant, and obviously with the involvement with the Borg and the cube and stuff that these guys have in Picard, it would be great to see Picard and Janeway team up in this show. Not to mention, let's face it, we'll take any guest stars on this show. I think whether we see ex Next Generation alumni, DS9 or Voyager, I think anybody is going to be welcome. Anybody's going to be welcome to show up in this show. I think we're not gonna say no to any guest stars from any previous series. And obviously we know from the interview that Patrick Stewart did a few weeks back or a month back with Whoopi Goldberg on The View, we know that Guinan will be back as a guest star in season 2. I think, has there been confirmation that the EMH Doctor from Voyager will be in season 2, or is that just a rumor? I've heard some things saying it was a rumor, some things saying it was sort of semi-confirmed. If anybody knows whether that was actually a confirmed rumor, or whether that was just a sort of a rumor without being confirmed, that would be very interesting. But yeah, obviously, I think one thing that has to be the case, which was seemed to be played out in last week's episode, we want to see ex Next Generation DS9 Voyager characters pop up in Picard, providing I think they're the original actors. We don't want to see recasts. I was quite disappointed when we found out that the actor who was playing Maddox in the last episode wasn't Brian Brophy, the original actor who played Maddox in The Next Generation. I wasn't as disappointed, even though Icheb had far more episodes and far more screen time in Voyager. I don't think it bothered me that it wasn't the original actor that wasn't playing Icheb in last week's episode, because he was covered in blood. He had his eye plucked out. He was sort of lying down on the table where the camera was sort of looking up his nose. You sort of couldn't really, the camera angle and all the blood and gore in that episode, you kind of couldn't tell it wasn't the original actor anyway. So I wasn't as disappointed when I found out that it wasn't the original actor playing Icheb as I was about Maddox. I think it would have been nice to see Brian Brophy. And from what I can gather, someone was posting on my video some comments in the comments section, who actually goes to Caltech, because Brian Brophy, who played Maddox in the original Next Generation episode, he is a lecturer at Caltech in dramatic arts, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, if that is in fact incorrect, but that's my impression. And someone who posted on my comment section said that Brian Brophy wasn't even asked to reprise his role as Maddox in last week's episode, which I kind of find really disappointing. If I would have thought, maybe here we go. Andrew, yes, thank you. Brian Brophy is Director of Theatre Arts at USC and was most likely occupied. The person who commented on my video, who is at that college with Brian Brophy, apparently spoke to him, and Brian Brophy said, this is not straight from the horse's mouth, this is just secondhand from somebody who commented on my video, said that he wasn't even asked. The producers of Picard didn't even ask him if he wanted to reprise his role as Maddox. Maybe they thought, well, he dies off in one episode. He's only in a couple of scenes. You know, he wouldn't want to reprise his role. I'd be very interested to get some more information on this. At the moment, it's kind of just hearsay or speculation. I know. So the person who commented on my video, David Seal, I believe is his name. David, if you're listening, please, if you can find out some more information for us on Brian Brophy and whether he has a comment at all on Maddox and so forth, that would be very interesting to know. Very interesting to know. Wow. Dawson, Jerry Ryan said that she and Janeway spoke at most 2 times offset during the series. Okay. Maybe there was some animosity there. I'm not sure, or maybe they didn't get along. I don't know. I kind of agree, Andrew. It is kind of crappy that if Brian Brophy was in fact not asked if he wanted to reprise his role as Maddox, surely the producers would have asked him. That it just seems unfathomable to me that, you know, you wouldn't at least kind of, even if you assume he's going to say no, even if you assume he's going to be busy, or he's going to say, no, I don't want to reprise my role. It's one short scene and then I die. I couldn't be bothered. You'd surely at least ask the question. You'd at least ask the question, do you want to, and give him the opportunity to turn it down. Because, you know, all he can do is say no. You know, chances are he might have jumped at the opportunity. I mean, the episode Measure of a Man, as I've said previously in some of my other videos, is probably one of the most iconic episodes of Next Generation. And, you know, surely if you were given the opportunity to reprise your role and involvement in an episode that was so memorable, you would kind of, you know, take that opportunity, I would think. But, you know, but that's just me. I don't know. But hopefully if my commenter on my video can find out some more news or information and get back to me, that would be great to know some more inside intel on Brian Brophy's, whether he has a comment at all about Maddox and his involvement or lack thereof in last week's episode. In other news, apparently the Section 31 series has been delayed. This one that's meant to be featuring Michelle Yeoh. And there might have been some complications. I'm not sure what you guys reckon about this Section 31 series. It's meant to be in the works. But out of all of the different elements of Star Trek, because Section 31, I think, is so dark, and one thing which we're trying to do our best, correct me if I'm wrong, to kind of steer a little bit further clear of is this dark, depressing kind of side of Star Trek. I think we all kind of want a little bit more of the uplifting and hopeful side of Star Trek, and not the dour, depressing kind of post-apocalyptic or you know, dour and sad kind of side of Star Trek. So a Section 31 series is kind of almost, to me, it strikes me as something none of us kind of really asked for. We didn't ask for a Section 31 series. I wouldn't have thought it would have been super high on the list of something that fans wanted. So I think there's some issues going on with this Section 31 series in terms of development of it, due to some delays, maybe some conflict delays regarding Michelle Yeoh's schedule. And her availability, perhaps. So I'm not sure what's going on that front, but all I know is that there's been delays in the development, and I think they might have pushed the the air date way forward on that show. So it'd be interesting to see what comes up there. So Andrew says there's a weekly CBS sponsored podcast. Is interesting. Last week they had Frakes. Prior week they had okay, interesting. I'll have to check that one out, Andrew. Thanks for that. Apart from this Section 31 series, a couple of CBS I think has confirmed 2 more Star Trek shows upcoming that haven't been announced yet. We obviously know the Section 31 thing is coming. We know this animated series Lower Decks is coming soon. But apparently there's 2 more shows that are in development as well from CBS. One of those which seems to be this Pike series. Obviously, Anson Mount's appearance in the last season of Discovery was incredibly popular. In fact, one thing that kind of struck me watching it, and particularly watching the short treks, there was a couple of short treks which heavily featured Captain Pike and also Number One in these little short trek episodes. I actually I watched these short treks and it's like, this is the show I want to watch. Let's not worry about Discovery anymore. Give me this show, please. This is the show that I would like to see. I think Anson Mount's portrayal of Pike was great. I think obviously fans really embraced it with both hands. So I think it's kind of almost been semi kind of confirmed but not officially confirmed that this Pike series, which shows because I think somebody might be able to correct me on this one if I'm wrong, but I believe that Pike was in command of the Enterprise for something like, was it 5 years or 10 years before Kirk took over? So there's a good 5 or 10 years of potential storytelling there with Pike in command of the Enterprise before Kirk took the reins. So I think that would be one show that would be, great to see. I think everybody liked Pike in the last season of Discovery, and I think that's something everyone would, I think, embrace. I think that's got to be embraced more than this Section 31 show. I just don't see this Section 31 show being all that interesting, and it's just going to be, if it's just going to be kind of. If it's going to be like Discovery Season 1, then I'm sort of almost not really that interested in it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see this Pike show and what that is like, because they did make a very good effort, I think, in the last season of Discovery to definitely make that season a bit more like the Star Trek of old that we know, when in comparison with season 1 of Discovery. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what they do with season 3 of Discovery. Apart from that, I did hear some rumours of a potential Starfleet Academy series, perhaps. This is one they've been kind of throwing around for quite some time. This Starfleet Academy show. I know that CBS have trademarked the title. Whether that means they're actually going to do anything with it or not, I'm not sure. But it does seem like that is possibly one of the shows they're talking about doing. That being said, if that's going to be just a show with, a bunch of sort of 17 or 18-year-olds, like a kind of a CW version of Star Trek where, there's not one bloody cast member over 27 in the cast, I'm not sure how that might play out either. So there's obviously a lot of irons in the fire to speak of at the moment on the Star Trek front. But you're right, DJ. The new time jump in Discovery might be too much for that to happen. I mean, it's almost. This time jump in Discovery for season 3, which is, 900 years into the future? I think that it's almost like a soft reboot, it would seem, because obviously it's almost like pushing the reset button on the show. So yeah, hopefully they will the producers will learn from the mistakes and successes of the last 2 seasons and put those to good use. Okay, so right. Thanks, Amelia. So when Pike showed up on Discovery, he'd just ended a 5-year mission. I think they've alluded to him being in command of 2 5-year missions. Yes. Okay. So if he's just finished the first stint and he's about to do one more stint of 5 years before Kirk takes over, that would be good. It would be nice to see a bit more serialized, like original series and Next Generation. A bit more serialized or a bit less serialized, because obviously Picard is incredibly serialized in the sense that each episode is essentially to be continued from the previous one. I think maybe you mean not serialized. So by not being serialized, I think you're meaning that each episode is a self-contained story, rather than being to be continued every week. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, look, I mean, it's certainly that type of storytelling has kind of gone out of flavor in recent years with streaming services like Netflix and Amazon and so forth. I think these new streaming services that we have absolutely love the serialized format of TV shows because they hook you in. The shows hook you in. They have each episode to be continued because they think it guarantees viewership in forthcoming weeks. They got to hook you in. They got to get you watching. And they are so paranoid. God, the amount of times Netflix bloody throws ads in your face or whatever the second you finish watching one show, just in case, they're paranoid that if you don't keep watching the next episode, you're going to suddenly unsubscribe immediately. So they're so obsessed with serialized content because they think it hooks you in that nobody seems to like self-contained episodes anymore. And it is, and I guess it was very much a 1980s staple in TV viewing. So I guess it would probably be hard to convince the powers that be to bring back that older style of storytelling. One thing I think would probably work well, and I think they did this in the last season of Enterprise, and I know they've done quite a lot over the years with other series like Doctor Who, and that's have a show that's serialized, but only serialized over, say, 3 episodes. So you do one 3-episode story, which essentially becomes like a mini movie. So if you've got sort of 3 42-minute episodes, and they're all to be continued. But then once those 3 episodes have played out, it becomes a whole new story. So you get kind of like these little mini-series or little movie-length stories. I think that would be good because it means you can tell more self-contained stories, but they are less serialized. So serialized over a couple of episodes, and then we move on and we have a story about something completely different. I think that would be a good way of doing it. I think it would be a nice medium in between the full-on every episode is serialized, every episode is to be continued, and the older kind of 1980s kind of TV storytelling where you essentially press the reset button at the end of each episode and tell a whole new story each week. So there is. Yes, that's right, Marsom. So I think there's a little bit of a delay on the live stream in terms of when I see it pop up on my screen and the messages come through. So apologies for the for the delay there. Well, so Andrew, CBS is just releasing Picard once a week, even though it's streaming and completely because they want people continuing to talk about it for a couple of months, like Disney did with Mandalorian. Yeah, look, I mean, exactly. It gets people talking. I think they've definitely done the right thing in terms of releasing episodes once a week. I know Netflix has sometimes released series such as Lost in Space that they've just dumped the entire show in one lot. Here, 10 episodes, bang, just drop it immediately. And I think that that's probably not a great idea because it doesn't inspire as much conversation. I know from the point of a content creator on YouTube, you know, it's almost like a full-time job. The amount of work I put in to this channel, it's, you know, you're putting in multiple days' work, many hours editing and shooting the reviews and all that sort of stuff to keep the channel running. It's a hell of a lot of work to do that. So I appreciate all you guys watching and tuning in to see my show. But I think if you had an entire season of episodes drop in one go, trying to cover that would be incredibly difficult from a content creation point of view. You know, it's sometimes it's, you know, as I said, it's a full-time job just keeping up with talking about one episode per week on my channel, and I'm sure other people's channels who also talk about Star Trek Picard and other sci-fi TV shows. So one last announcement. I was next week, I'll be doing a live stream. If any of you guys know JP from Egotastic Fun Time, I will be doing a live stream with him next week. He often does some reviews and chats about Star Trek Picard as well on his channel, which is kind of TV sci-fi related, much like my own. So we'll be doing a bit of a collaboration next week and doing a live stream together. So that'll be something worth tuning into. Looking forward to that. And that's about it for today's live stream. Thanks everybody. Thanks Andrew and DJ Marsom and Dawson, everybody else, Joel, everybody who tuned in and dropped some comments in the comment section. Good to have you guys in the chat. Really appreciate your support of my channel. And I'll be coming out probably very soon. I'll be working hard today or tomorrow on my review and breakdown of episode 6 as it comes out. And we'll have that to look forward to. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning in today for my live stream. Really appreciate it. No worries, Andrew. Great to have you on board. And yeah, don't forget to everybody who perhaps is watching and hasn't subscribed. Please don't forget to subscribe and like and share this video and let your friends know about my channel. That would be fantastic. And yeah, I'll see you again soon for my my review of episode 6 when that comes out. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next time.